For our next session, Decarbonizing the Agri-Food Value Chain, Proven Strategies for Global Suppliers and Brands. Please welcome to the stage our moderator, CEO Terrascope, Maya Hari, CSO Olam Agri, Julie Greene, and Senior Director for Responsible Sourcing and Supplier Development, Kellanova, Jennifer Hebets.
Hey everyone, nice to see you all. Very warm welcome to this panel, to Julie and Jennifer. Thank you for being here. Maybe a quick round of introductions first. My name is Maya Hari. I'm the CEO for Terrascope. Terrascope is an end-to-end decarbonization software and carbon management platform. We're very focused on the land-based economy, if you will. We work with companies in retail, in agri, in food, hospitality, etc. I have the absolute pleasure of having two people that I've had the pleasure of working with over the past few years through Terrascope, and who are real experts in their lines of work. So first up, Julie Greene. Julie, welcome to the panel. Julie's the CSO at Olam Agri, also the chair of the Africa Cotton Foundation, and someone who deeply believes in building a greener world and inclusive socioeconomic development. And this comes through in everything that Julie does, and I'm sure you'll hear that as we go. We also have Jennifer Hebets. Jennifer, thank you for being here. She's Senior Director of Responsible Sourcing and Supplier Diversity. Great to have you here aside at Kellanova. Jennifer has had a string of impressive roles in the past, even prior to Kellanova, that spans Brightseed Bio, as well as Mars, as well as doing sustainable agriculture with USAID. So we definitely want to hear a lot from her as well. Before we go into serious questions, I thought we wanted to make you remember us better as panelists. So we're going to ask every one of us to share a fun fact about ourselves. And just to give Julie a moment to figure out her fun fact, I'm going to start with mine. I'm an urban farmer by passion, and the thing I love growing over the weekends is pineapples. So with that, over to you, Julie. What's your fun fact?
Gosh, I've negotiated safe passage for my trucks with armed rebels, but I'm terrified and get panic attacks when I'm 6 meters under trying to scuba dive.
That's amazing.
Well, thank you for the kind intro, Maya. It's a pleasure to be here. I think you will remember me if I tell you, don't think of me up here in a suit. Think of me clad head to toe in Lycra and a helmet and glasses this big, because that's what I look like on the weekends. Love to ride my bike and train for triathlons.
Nice. Hopefully we've given you visuals that diversify ourselves a little bit from the topic we're talking about. But let's maybe get started. I would love to hear really Olam Agri's journey and Kellanova's journey around decarbonization. How have you been thinking about the net zero journey ahead? Where are things at, and what has it taken to get to where you're at now? Julie, you want to kick us off?
Sure. You know, Olam Agri is an agribusiness company. We're dealing in staple commodities, among them the ones that make up 2/3 of our global calories. You know, your grains like wheat and rice and maize and soy, also cotton and other commodities. And as we grew, we realized that it was so important for us to consider the impact, the carbon impact of our operations. I know that everybody here knows how significant food and agri-systems are in terms of the carbon footprint. And so we really started trying to measure this back in 2017. And and we were quite overwhelmed at that moment because there were areas where we had the general data, okay, we're buying this from this supplier, this country. And then there were areas where we're working very closely with, about 500,000 farmers in our smallholder supply chains, and we've got every little parcel mapped out. We're giving them training and support. We know all the inputs that go in. And we thought, how do we look at all of this information and quantify? So of course, we used the emissions factors, and we started off with a big, enormous Excel spreadsheet. We were very happy, of course, when Terrascope came up to also have that tool to help with the quantification and the identification of hotspots. And what we realized is that we can do this at different levels. So it's a progressive thing. So where we have super detailed information, we have a super detailed carbon footprint. And where we don't have as detailed information, we still have a good idea of where we stand. And this tells us where should we be focused. So it was really about mapping out all of our supply chains, big farmers, small farmers, wherever we are in the world, and understanding where the hot spots could be, and then we know where do we want to dive into the details. So that's what we started with, and with that now we mapped out some 40 priority areas where we can intervene, both in our own factories, like renewable energies, as well as in our supply chains with better farming practices.
Great, thank you. And Jennifer, we'd love to hear the Kellanova side.
Sure. So for Kellanova, those of you who may not be familiar with the name of Kellanova, we were the Kellogg company up until this year. So this is the global snacking company that manufactures all of your brands that you grew up with, right? The Rice Krispies and Cheez-Its and Pringles and Nutri-Grain bars and much more than that. So we're now called Kellanova, and the Kellogg company and now Kellanova has been on a journey ostensibly since 2017, and when we really began to look at what would decarbonizing the company look like, right? It was becoming a thing that many of our peers were doing. The industry was really starting to take a hard look at the carbon impact of a company and of food companies in particular on the planet. And like many companies, we started that journey really looking at our scope 1 and 2 footprint, right? They're much easier to quantify, much easier to track, and really easier to decarbonize. So we made fantastic progress up until, even just this last year, we reported numbers of reducing our scope 1 and 2 footprint by over 50% at this point, and we're well on our way to meeting our goals for 2030 and beyond. Along that journey, we did set a net zero target. We originally set a 2-degree aligned target, and as a new company, we're on a path to having SBTI approved goals for a 1.5-degree aligned target, which means our targets are getting more ambitious. We've been growing as a company, and we've had to grapple with that reality of how do you decouple business growth from reducing your carbon footprint. And of course, as a food company, we always knew that our scope 3 footprint was really going to be where rubber hits the road. And yet we weren't really equipped to tackle it because we had a couple of really big roadblocks in the way. One, of course, was data. And we always knew we had directionally an idea of what our scope 3 footprint looked like, but the more we got into it, and as the industry matured, right, we realized there's more emissions factors and LCAs that we could be taking advantage of. Our own internal databases were getting more and more sophisticated, and we got to a point where we realized our data wasn't good enough to make high quality decisions with. And the only plug I'll make, but that is when we brought Terrascope in, and that actually allowed us to have an extremely granular, very high fidelity understanding of our entire scope 3 carbon footprint. And that was a huge step forward for us. I'd say that journey has now enabled us to create plans for each of our regional business units that now understand what their respective hotspots are. We understand what the breakdown of our scope 3 footprint this shouldn't be a surprise, but it's a fact I feel like I always need to say that most companies in the food space, our Scope 3 footprint for Kellanova in particular is 93% of our entire carbon footprint. Ingredients and packaging make up 68% of our Scope 3 footprint. So now we can say that with a very high degree of confidence, and now it is indisputable that we have to go after agriculture and decarbonizing agriculture in our supply chain. If we don't tackle that, we will never be anywhere near becoming a net zero company. And a big part of that journey is having that data, having that conviction now, taking that inside our business and really making sure that our leadership fully understands it, our employees fully understand it, and that it is something that every single employee at the company internalizes and sees as part of their jobs and part of their, and empowering them to really take that information and utilize it in how they make decisions on a day-to-day basis.
It's amazing. It's, very interestingly, Jennifer, you said it wasn't quite a surprise because you start to expect that in the industry, these are the hotspots. But in a way, getting to that first measurement at depths with accuracy becomes such a stage gate to what comes after, right? Because you want to have substantiated comfort in knowing that now I know how to plan initiatives downstream. Which brings me to maybe the next question, which is, share a little bit, we'd love to hear a little bit about what has come after that. What are the deeper initiatives that you're thinking about for actually, driving that decarbonization year on year? Would be great to understand. Let's say, Julie, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, sure. I mean, similar to you, Kellanova, we realized that, of course, Scope 3 is by far the majority of our footprint. And that isn't something that we knew before we really got into this exercise. So on the Scope 1 and 2 side, there we have our initiatives around increasing the share from renewable energy. It's actually quite fun in a way to look at what are the opportunities to transform waste streams into productive uses. And that's often coming straight back into either cogen plants for our facilities in Nigeria and in Congo, as well as into nutrition for soils. So it really becomes circular instead of waste. So we discovered these things that we might not have been looking at before we, really realized the importance of paying attention and, coming in from that carbon lens. So then on the agriculture side, it's of course all about finding nature-based solutions, on-farm solutions to decarbonize. Two of the products where we're quite active in this now are rice and cotton. On the rice side, of course, rice has a lot of methane emissions, which can be significantly reduced and cut about in half by introducing alternate wetting and drying, as well as combining this with laser land leveling, improved nutrient management, and other things that reduce the methane emissions and also reduce emissions related to fertilizers and such. So that's been quite successful, combined with field extension work, and done, of course, in collaboration with government, ourselves, donors, research institutions as well, to help us to really hone in on what are the practices that work and harness the different skills and resources that we brought in. And now building on that 4-year program, where, by the way, we were able to see that we significantly reduced emissions, but also farmers increased, they didn't just maintain, but they increased their profits by about 20%. This was in our work with about 50,000 farmers in Thailand and Vietnam. So now we're expanding that to other countries, and we're also expanding the partnership with other funders and with banks and others as well, and expanding it beyond us, which is really important. So that's an area we've been working on in rice. Now in cotton, the focus is really on getting more organic matter back into the soils. And we're doing this significantly in West Africa, where we work with about 300,000 cotton farmers in Chad and in Côte d'Ivoire and in Togo. And in Africa, the land, the soils are degrading at a rate about 100 times faster than the natural rate of regeneration. At the same time, West Africa, also holds something like 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land. So there's a huge opportunity there, but we've got to make sure that when we tap into that opportunity with, of course, there's so many things required from a financing and skills point of view, that we do it in a way that is restoring and regenerating soils. So we've been doing that. We're very proud to have gotten Regen Agri certified in Côte d'Ivoire for 250,000 hectares with 20,000 farm enterprises there. And we're seeing how we can scale this model to other places.
Yeah, super exciting to hear the outcomes around decarbonization and improvement of income from the smallhold farmers. Those are kind of wins that you want to see more and more, and in a way that adds to not just outcomes overall for the ecosystem, but also makes there less friction in going down this path over time. That's amazing to hear. Jennifer, I'd love to hear where are the deep initiatives in your world? What has been the focus for you?
Yeah. Yeah, incredible programs from Olam. It's inspiring. On the Kellanova side, we were on this journey of getting our data right, and it's taken the better part of a year to do that. But we knew we can't hit pause, and we have to start with what we know and take action where we can. So we've been kind of parallel pathing our journey to get more accurate, but also taking what we know is directionally right and not letting, I think you said this in the green room, right? Not letting perfect be the enemy of good. And so we actually, for years, even before we started on our net zero journey, we've had a portfolio of programs that support farmers all over the world, where we've worked directly with our suppliers and partner, all the way up our value chains. Originally, these were projects that were meant to help improve incomes and livelihoods of farmers, and oftentimes they had a very clear business objective, where we just needed to secure supply of a very important ingredient in our supply chain, and we knew the best way to do that is to get involved upstream, right? So we had a kind of several pockets of these projects all over the world, and then as we got further into our Scope 3 journey, we realized, hey, these are decarbonizing projects too. Yeah. So we've actually been able to kind of go and retrofit some of these projects and introduce practices to those farming communities and to the farmers in these supply chains that have the scientific backing and are known to be, decarbonizing types of agricultural practices. So we've done some AWD work in Louisiana. We're doing some no-till work with farmers and reducing inputs with corn farmers in Mexico. We have a project in North Carolina with wheat farmers. And what we've learned along this journey is where can we take advantage of where we already have relationships in the supply chains, where the science is giving us, relatively strong evidence that there are practices that will have an impact on reducing carbon, and then what are the right types of technologies and partnerships that we need to bring into this so that we can validate it, right? So we've started working with a suite of MRV partners all over the world and all sorts of different MRV tools, and really starting to kind of for us, be on a learning journey of how do you capture this information with some wins and losses here and there. And at this point, we're really starting to hone in on a model that works in terms of, you need to have farmers that are committed. You need to have a long-term commitment or relationship with your supplier. You need to have an MRV partner. You need to have some sort of technical and scientific advisory function that's making sure that you're promoting the right kinds of practices. So at this point, we have enough knowledge base and best practices that we've generated that now that our data is good, we're actually in a position to really scale up some of this work, which we're excited about and see some huge potential for. So I'd say in particular, our project in North Carolina is a great example of a best practice, because it's a project where we have one of our retail customers, Ahold Delhaize USA, we have our North American wheat supplier, Bartlett Mills, and we have our MRV partner, Arva Intelligence, and we've all gotten together. It's all being co-funded by these various actors to work with the wheat farmers. They're all within a 125-mile radius of Kellanova's Cary, North Carolina plant that produces Cheez-Its and Club Crackers. So all of the wheat is grown within that radius and processed by Bartlett Mills in that radius, and then goes over to our plant and gets made into Cheez-Its and Club Crackers. And it's a great example of taking a local ecosystem, aligning actors around a common goal, aligning financing around a common goal, and really unleashing that potential. So we're excited to replicate many more programs like that.
Yeah, I love that story, especially bringing the local ecosystem and the supporting ecosystem across the value chain is hugely powerful.
Yeah.
I loved hearing that story. I guess, is there anything either of you might add on how you see initiatives as you traverse time? How do you see these evolve? Do you see these evolve, or is this actually truly kind of things that take multi-years and really drive scale? I don't know if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, of course, in all the initiatives that when we're prioritizing our initiatives, we need to think about what makes sense from the business perspective as well as from the carbon perspective, and then many other factors like you mentioned around the security of supply, quality, farmer livelihoods. So we really have to look at that holistically. And of course, one of the drivers can potentially be around the market mechanisms that can come in to reward either a carbon value, or I see a lot of hope in also rewarding nature. Again, that investment in soil, it's so important for us to invest in soil, not just because of carbon, but also because of the importance of the soil microbiome, of soil for the environment, for productivity and everything else. So having mechanisms like this, as well as other sorts of government incentives and also demand signals, helps to orient where we might prioritize our actions. And I think that's still evolving.
Yeah.
As we see, there's various initiatives. There's First Movers Coalition for Food, for example, and other initiatives and coalitions that Fashion Pact and others like this that help to create a demand drive that I think is really important to bring these initiatives to scale really from the ground up.
Yeah, great point you make around just thinking about the ecosystem and where things are changing in that ecosystem, driving some of the prioritization of the incentives. Anything on your end, Jennifer?
I think where we want to go from here is to take the lessons we've learned, to take the high quality data that we now have, and figure how to make some very intelligent, strategic decisions. You'll hear lots of people say this week, we're past the era of pilots, right? It's time to do big scale stuff. And I think this is particularly important the more we know about kind of the science of decarbonizing agriculture, is that you really need to take a landscape approach, right? We need to be looking at ecosystems holistically. We need to be looking at biodiversity. We need to be looking at, the rotation of the crops and how that affects the carbon footprint. So, and that's all very complicated and takes a lot of actors and takes time. And you can't do all of that well if you have kind of a what's the term, like a, if you're casting a wide net and kind of throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. So we're at a point now where I think we're ready to make some decisions about where we're going to go big, right? Where we're going to double down and where we can make a big investment or really, be able to make a strong business case for a particularly vulnerable supply chain that we will be able to quantify and say, we are de-risking this for the business, or we'll be able to tell, really rich stories that our customers and our consumers will be able to leverage in, myriad different platforms and avenues. So I'm excited to, now that we are gradually turning the ocean liner of a large organization, and when I hear people, in my organization who don't work with me or anywhere near my teams say things like Scope 3 and decarbonizing and regenerative agriculture, I just want to pat myself on the back and say, things are working here. The momentum is really starting. And now we need to leverage that momentum and put that energy into significant initiatives that are really going to, turn the dial, right? So yeah.
You won when non-sustainability people say Scope 3.
Exactly.
That's got to be
so
a
exciting
consistent kind of thing we remember.
They may not use it correctly, but.
Maybe one final kind of big question for us. There's obviously a lot of change we want to see collectively as society, as industry, as a world, to be able to get to a future which is decarbonized and ready for kind of net zero pathways. What would be on your wish list if you were, in wearing your advocacy hat and sort of saying, I wish this could happen? What would that be? What would you wish for us as a collective?
Yeah, I mean, picking up on the theme of going big, we need market mechanisms as well that can support that. And what I mean by that is, I think there is an absolute a place and a value and an importance in having differentiated products that are with various sorts of certifications, including low carbon sorts of attributes that can go to a premium market. But I also think we have to recognize that on this planet, and at the scale of this planet, the premium market will always be that. And so this has an important value, and I think that can bring value, down, up and down the whole value chain. We also need market mechanisms and incentives that work for scaled products. Again, coming to those key commodities that really underpin our food systems and the bulk of our calories, the grains and other things. That people probably you're not going to pay a premium when you're buying your loaf of bread. So we need to make sure that there's ways to incentivize and reward that. Can that come from markets, carbon markets, nature markets? Can it also come from government incentives and disincentives, related to the health of the soils? Because right now, growing food is in a way of mining nutrients from the soil for something that is so important for us as people. We also need to get value out of nourishing the soil itself.
Yeah, great framing. Thank you for sharing that. Jennifer, what's on your wish list?
My wish list, in addition to all of that, tends to go towards the super pragmatic sometimes. And I think what I've seen is, anyone who's here this week is already bought in that this is important, right? We need to meet the rest of the world where they're at. And that plays out in the context of, in the microcosm of a business. And we need to meet our businesses where they're at, right? And our businesses who are trying to return value for their shareholders, who are trying to navigate times where costs are continuously increasing, where we have geopolitical uncertainty, and sustainability is just kind of one more mosquito in the ear of a very busy CEO who has a lot on their plate sometimes. And I think my wish list is for everyone who cares about these issues and understands the complexity of what we're trying to implement, particularly in decarbonizing agriculture, is we have to push ourselves to speak the business speak and to meet the decision makers where they're at. And that's not just super senior leaders in an organization. It's the other decision makers who make small decisions every single day. It's the marketer who's going to decide, am I going to run a Super Bowl campaign, or am I going to run a campaign about this regenerative agriculture project? Or it's the procurement buyer who says, am I going to give my buy to this supplier who doesn't have a regenerative ag program or visibility into their supply chain, or the supplier who does, right? And so my wish list is for all of us as sustainability professionals to learn how to speak the speak of our counterparts in these businesses, and to infuse them with excitement and accountability and empowerment to make all the micro decisions that actually create that long-term change and impact. So.
Great. I love the fact that Super Bowl ad or sustainable agriculture ad. How about an and, not an or?
Exactly.
How
I would
about
love
advertising
that.
in the Super Bowl for that? But thank you to you both. We've had amazing conversations. Thank you for really sharing your pragmatic day-to-day lives and how you're driving change in very important ways in your companies. Thank you. I'm sure we all got a lot of takeaways from that.
Yeah. Thank you, Maya.
Thank you very much.
You.